Hello, and welcome back to the Empathy Labs. I'm your host, Selena Isles, and here we are, episode 4. It's Sunday, it's January 25th. We've just come through the Pluto Kazemi. We've also just celebrated my Earth Strong last week. So that's been really lovely. And if you've been joining us here over the last couple of weeks, since we launched the Empathy Labs podcast, you probably have been following everything we've talked about from the anti mantra to the shape of your conflict, not really looking at how we're going to fix it. That's coming. I have gotten a lot of comments from you guys, a lot of emails, texts asking, okay, I've identified my shape. I'm a tangle, I'm a circle. And I'm like, okay, wait, hold on, everybody. We still have one more shape of geometry to discuss and a couple of other things I'd like to dial back and dive into in this particular podcast. So that for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, you're not like, I'm not really sure what's going on here. It's my first time listening to the Empathy Labs. I'm not really sure what an Empathy Lab is. Am I empathetic? Do I have empathy? What really is all of that? So, as I said, we spent the last few weeks in the lab mapping the shades of our resistance. So, our conflict patterns, how we are conflicted inside, and what that means. We've dissected the tangle, which is the frantic noise. We looked at the circle, which is the rhythmic, comfortable loop where we pay a massive energy tax just to stay in the familiar. And that's something I want us to take pause at. Those two shapes that we've dissected, the tango, which is frantic noise, and the rhythmic, familiar, comfortable loop, which is the circle. And if you've noticed during the course of this week, which was your homework from last week's podcast, was to see which shape, circle or tango, that you found yourself in this week. And now on today's episode, we're going to talk about one of the other shapes. We're talking about a shape that everyone claims that they want, but almost everybody is subconsciously allergic to this shape. They want to be this shape, but they don't like it when it shows up in their conflict patterns. And that's a straight line. And some of you are like, well, the straight line can't be that bad. Like, I'm always a straight line. I'm a straight shooter. I get right to the middle of the conflict and I try to figure it out and I untangle it and I'm not in the circle. Okay, that's fine. If that's your inner conversation, hey, that's cool. Not here to diagnose, just doing some structural surgery, dissecting, looking at a couple of things, presenting it. And I will say, in my 20 years of mapping friction, from boardrooms of global brands to the internal policy work at the HRDC, I've realized that the straight line is the most expensive. Let me underline that again for you folks. The most expensive shape to inhabit and to occupy and to want to be about. Why? Because the straight line is the exit. It leaves no room. It leaves no room for mediation. It leaves, sometimes we think if we're the straight line, we go right to the resolution. However, what we fail to realize is we leave no room for anything else, no room for someone else's feelings, opinions, emotions, things that matter. We leave no room to hold space and lean in and learn. And the straight line we feel is something that we aspire to be. But when we look at our conflict patterns, is that really how we want to show up for ourselves? The straight line leaves no room for noise. There's no room, as I said, for anything that could even look like, hey, what would it look like over here? Is the grass really green on the other side? Straight line says no. The grass is green on this side, and this is what the grass is going to be. And you have no reason to look over there because this is all you need to do. And, in resolution work, in conflict resolution work, sometimes the straight line, when we apply these shapes to how to resolve things, bum, 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 that's coming up. Now we know our shape, how to resolve things with our shape. Using the straight line does work. When things come to an influx, sometimes the straight line works to just bring people to the same side. And when I say to the same side, what the straight line can do, and we'll look at that later on, is allow us to erode our boundary, so that someone else will erode theirs. Not because, oh, I'm going to erode mine and you'll erode yours. No, I can erode my boundary because I can, not because I'm expecting anything from it or for it. Anyway, I went on a total tangent, and thank you everyone for going there with me. So back to the straight line. We're looking at the mantra versus the anti-mantra. So that's one I want to talk a little bit about in today's podcast is what is the mantra versus the anti-mantra. Because some of you have written me and said, you know what, Selena, I don't really agree with the way you're describing mantras. Mantras are resonant sounds. They're there to make us better versions of ourselves, to make the container shine, to allow us to flow, not be fixated. And that's true. Absolutely. And to those of you, I'm not taking anything away from the mantra. What I want us to look at is the anti-mantra, because we've clung to the concept, the idea of the resonant sound, the same way that we've clung to the anti-mantra. And to understand why the straight line is so hard to hold, we have to look at the language that we use. And anybody that knows me and knows my work knows that everything comes down to language and how we use it, the way we use it, why we use it, and understanding the formula behind it. The anti-mantra is the language that we use to block it. In my doctoral research, so what this whole thing is about, or part of what it's about, I've been investigating a principle I call the anti-mantra. And I'll break it down for you right now. Most of you know, as I said before, what a mantra is: a potent sound or a phrase that stabilizes your system through resonance. It makes you feel seen. It makes you feel grounded. It brings you here, right now, 100% presence. But an anti-mantra is the inverse. It's the language designed to systematically destabilize you. The anti-mantra is the inverse. It is the language designed to systematically destabilize you through dissonance. It's not just about mean words like circle back and let's put a pin in it. You don't know what you're talking about. It's about structural weapons that deny you the right to exist in the conversation. Think about it and let's let it sink in for a second. Structural weapons that deny you the right to exist in a conversation. And I'm pretty sure, as I said that sentence, a bunch of folks have just gone over several conversations that they've had within the last 3 days. And oh boy, are you preparing now, because I've armed you with some artillery for the conversations and the fights you're about to have in the next coming days. What I've done is I've identified 3 levels of these. And today, I want us to focus on the most dangerous one. So I'm going to start from the most dangerous one, work my way out. We'll see how the shapes play a form into this. Remember, we're talking about the straight line now, okay? We're talking about the straight line in terms of our geometry, what shape we inhibit when we're in conflict. And today we've introduced what the anti-mantra is. And the most dangerous one of these is what I call the systematic recognition block. Anti-mantras are phrases that shift conflict from the content, so the actual problem, to recognition, which is your right to matter. So we're no longer looking at what is the actual root cause analysis, what started this. We've now shifted to recognition. So your right to matter, your right to have an opinion, your right to have a thought, a feeling, an emotion about whatever it is you're in discussion about or in conflict about. I'll put it to you like this. Have you ever heard any of these? You're being oversensitive. It's not how we do things here. That's not how I was raised. You're being controlling. Are you dumb? You're not listening. Who does he think he is? What? These aren't merely arguments, folks. These are structural weapons, almost like setting off a nuclear explosion, right? These phrases, and don't forget the tone. So you have the phrase and you have the tone that shapes the anti-mantra or the weapon. They delete the legitimacy of your emotional experience and also your authority in that experience. The second anti-mantra is dropped. The straight line is established. Resolution goes out the window. Why? Because you're no longer fighting about that late report or the dishes or who's going to put the kids to bed or why are your shoes blocking the front door or how come you couldn't close the drawer for the 18th millionth time. You're now fighting for your fundamental right to speak, to exist, to be heard, to take up space. And here are some of the Pavlovian triggers. But before I talk about that, I want to say that rational negotiation becomes impossible the moment your validity is threatened. So the moment you and I are in an argument, let's imagine, because yeah, it's a podcast, and I threaten your validity, any type of negotiation with me, erosion of boundary. Let me go back and say any type of erosion of boundary that could have happened is no longer going to happen because I have invalidated your right as an authority to your own experience. And I'm pretty sure if you all are listening and feeling and embodying what I'm transmitting, you're feeling this right now. I'm stirring up a groove somewhere on the windshield of your existence. I'm pointing out a bug that's still there that you thought you had wiped away at the last gas station that we stopped at. But now we're in episode 4 and we've stopped and kept going and that bug is still there. And now here comes Selena, the structural surgeon, pointing it out. And there's a reason why I'm doing this. We'll look at it in diagnostic framework. We start talking about how do we negotiate tensions between all these things at the end of February and March. But I just want to say this, rational negotiation becomes impossible the moment your validity is threatened. And I want you all to take this to task this week. Field note, Pavlovian triggers. There is a level 3 Pavlovian trigger or a level 3 Pavlovian anti-mantra for the psychologists in the room, to which I'm not. I keep saying this to y'all. I am an anthropologist, neuroanthropologist. I'm not a psychologist. But the Pavlovian anti-mantra, these are neutral phrases that have accumulated static within your being over time. And you know one of my favorite ones of these is? And I say favorite, and I'm dripping with all kinds of tangled sarcasm right now. We need to talk. Whether it's delivered in a text, in a phone, in a group chat, technically, we need to talk is the request for a straight line. And because we need to talk has been paired with conflict so many times, from the movie to the songs we're listening to any and everything, your nervous system immediately hears this as a threat. Oh, shit. We need to talk. What did I do? What did I do? And you start going over everything that you've done, negating the fact that this is someone's possible request to an erosion of a boundary, because we need to talk has now become an anti-mantra, right? The energy tax is paid before the first word is even spoken, and we need to talk. Your blueprint is already in a clench. And so this week's folks, I'm not asking you to take the exit. I'm just asking you to watch the weapons, okay? And your assignment, just like you had your assignment last week, I'm giving you your assignment this week in life, work, home, play, presence, sleeping, existence, embodiment, everything at work. Actually, I should say number 1, at work. Listen for the level 2 anti-mantra that shuts down any innovation, your authority, your creation, your Shakti, anything. Just want you to listen for it. At home, notice if there's any triggers, as I spoke about just before, level 3 Pavlovian trigger. Notice if there's any trigger and you immediately start to clench. Now, your partner, child, spouse, whoever you're in community with, relationship with, might use what is to you an anti-mantra to something that they want to erode a boundary with. So I just want to put that out there. Notice the Pavlovian trigger. That's number 2. That starts to clench. Number 3, in life, What auntie mantra do you tell yourself to stay in the circle or the tangle? What are some of the things you say to yourself to stay in the circle or the tangle? Right? So that's in life. And 4, in play. Where are y'all avoiding straight line to resolution in order to keep the drama alive? Because all of these shapes can also be a way to resolution. But sometimes, all the time, anytime, each time, every time, we play over these grooves, these shapes, to keep the drama alive. Observe the clenches that follow. Tomorrow, the lab report on Substack arrives with the yantra, or the structural blueprint for recognizing an exit. Just recognizing it. Structural blueprint. And for those of you that live in the corporate world and you want to actually use this in your corporate, technical, working world where we can't use these terms, you can follow me on LinkedIn, sign up for the newsletter, and I break it all down using C-suite speak. As always, folks, I'm Selena Isles. This has been the Empathy Lab. Stay anchored, and I'll see you next week. Take care.